to Work in Progress. This is the podcast where we dive into strategies for success and journey towards progress. In today's episode, we are joined by one of our valued partners, Eure, to explore a powerful concept, no surprise management. Clay will share insights from her leadership journey, explain what no surprise management really means in the workplace, and highlight how communication, trust, and the right tools can help leaders avoid unexpected challenges that derail performance. We'll also dive into the role of assessments in strengthening team alignment, how managers can best respond when surprises do occur, and the mindset shifts needed to create a culture of transparency and accountability. So let's get started. Clay, welcome. We're so excited to have you join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, let's get down to it. And can you just share a little bit about your background and how your experiences have shaped your view on leadership?
Sure. So I have been a small business consultant my entire career, my entire #adult life. I started working with my dad in his small business consulting company back in 2013, 2 days after I graduated from college. Got the weekend off, and then I got right to work. But I've really learned from him. I call it my on-the-job MBA. He ran a small family business for 30, 40 years, basically my entire childhood. I would go to his office after school. The bus would drop me off, and I would just chill in the conference room there. So I've seen leadership in action both through him and also through my mother, who's been a nonprofit leader in our community for as long as I can remember as well. She was the executive director of 2 different nonprofits while I was growing up. So that, I would say, is my biggest hands-on leadership experience, as well as having grown up playing sports, knowing that coaches can really make a big difference in how they lead and bring their players along or not.
Out of curiosity, Clay, what sport did you play?
In high school, I played field hockey and soccer, and in college, I was a rower.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
you've actually experienced lots of different leadership. Like you said, it doesn't just have to be in a job role. It can also be coaches or others around you as well.
Yes, definitely. And I think coaching is a very underrated skill for leaders.
Yes, definitely. So getting on that topic, what does no surprise management really mean in practice? And why is it so important?
I think the biggest and kind of major tenet of no surprise management is that no one should ever be surprised by a piece of feedback that they receive, whether that is positive or negative. We don't want to come to the annual review and someone is surprised by what you're telling them. Or worse, we've come to a conversation where we're now letting someone go and they're surprised that everything has gone so poorly. So really, it's about being upfront and honest, making sure that people know exactly what's expected of them and have clear and consistent feedback along the way about whether they're meeting those expectations or not.
Okay. So then why, if, we as managers are communicating properly, why do surprises, especially unpleasant ones, like you mentioned, you're fired or there's a negative review at the year end, why do those unpleasant ones happen so often in the workplace?
In my experience working with small businesses, especially, a lot of it comes down to the fact that people don't like confrontation and they see giving feedback as conflict. And so they shy away from it. They haven't been given the tools, they haven't been given the training, they haven't been given the proper mindset about it. So they get scared when they need to tell someone something that they might perceive as maybe harsh or blunt. So they just don't do it. And then eventually that person starts annoying them over and over and over again. They're hinting and hoping that they'll change their ways of, oh, wasn't it nice when you came to work on time? Instead of saying, hey, we need to show up to work on time. And then eventually the manager reaches the end of the rope. And that's when you have the surprise of, hey, you're being let go today. And that person had no idea that the manager was so upset.
So what I'm hearing is clear communication. You have to be comfortable. So how can clear communication and trust help prevent some of those surprises?
Yeah. So the core of no surprise management is to connect, to communicate, and to confront. So
Okay.
the connection is really getting to know someone on a one-on-one basis, developing that personal relationship. You don't have to get drinks with them every day after work, but you need to know what's going on in their life. You need to connect with them and let them know that you care about them as an individual. They're not just a cog in the wheel that shows up from 9 to 5 and then disappears. Then communication is about really clearly laying out what's expected and being consistent in that feedback. And that's where the confront comes in, is when something does go wrong or when someone's not meeting expectations, we need to be willing to have an honest conversation, not be too afraid of that confrontation, and making sure that we're not sugarcoating things so that they're actually getting the message and have heard what you said.
So really, if you set up those first two, connect, communicate, that confrontation shouldn't be that difficult.
Right. And it goes back to relationships in and outside of the office. In an interpersonal relationship, for instance, with my fiance, we like to talk about things when they're small, and we deal with them when they're little, as opposed to letting them grow and grow and grow. And so if you're having that consistent communication, the confrontation is much easier because it's about little things, not about some giant thing that's been building for months.
That's when those big blowouts happen, and not a great way for a lot of people to especially be managed.
Yes. Yeah. We've heard a lot of horror stories from the managers we've worked with of previous bosses who, one in particular, if he was upset with you, he would never come to you directly. He would talk to the person in the office next to you and hope that it got back to you.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
that's just complete avoidance on that manager's part too. Little passive aggressive, maybe.
Definitely. Yeah. Not effective.
Not a good practice is what you're telling me.
Exactly.
So then what is a practical way that managers can help set those clear expectations from the beginning?
So for our clients, we really like to push written job descriptions.
Okay.
Let's not hire someone unless we know what they're going to be expected to accomplish. What does success look like in that role? We really want to benchmark that role and understand what they need to be doing on a day in and day out basis. And then once we hire them, we have a 30, 60, 90 plan for getting them the training they need, getting them the resources they need, getting them the knowledge they need to be successful. But they have those clear expectations from the start. It's not just me keeping things in my head, thinking I'll be able to clearly communicate it. I've actually written it down. And that's not only helpful for the new employee, but it's also helpful for me as the manager to think through, what does this role really need to be doing? And I can take a little more time and process that.
Okay. So again, that 30, 60, 90, setting that out day one is really going to help set up your new employee for success, essentially. And it basically gives the opportunity to, at the 30 days, talk about, okay, this is what we expect. This is the job role. And then you just have those regular check-ins. Is there a specific dashboard that you use for those 30, 60, 90, or you said that those are more written?
We don't use, I guess it depends on the role. There are certain roles that have a lot of metrics tied to them, like sales roles, for instance.
Yes, definitely.
But there are certain roles that are a little more ephemeral. And so it's really about, are they doing the right activities and accomplishing the right tasks versus meeting certain metrics. We do have a dashboard that we use with clients kind of overall for the company to give the leadership team a understanding of the health of the company at a quick glance. And then that trickles down into each of the departments. But we don't usually use a specific dashboard for 30, 60, 90. It's really just coming back to that job description and understanding, are they showing progress in developing the skills they need to be successful?
Okay. So then how can assessments support the no surprise management and really help strengthen the team alignment?
So we use assessments with every single one of our clients, and we really try to get everyone using them pre-hire because, as I said, we've benchmarked the role. We know what the role is supposed to be doing, supposed to be accomplishing. We know what that role is generally rewarded by. What are the kind of natural benefits of being in that position? And so we like to assess candidates before they're hired to help set them up for success, really making sure they have the right behaviors. They like the type of work that's needed to be done. And they're also motivated by the things that role naturally rewards. We can even get even deeper into, for leadership roles, I like to use emotional intelligence as well as acumen, which is more understanding how someone really thinks and makes judgment and decisions about the world around them. So we're really using these as a data point to get the right people in the right seats.
Okay.
And then on the other side, once the person has been onboarded, it gives the manager a great tool for that connecting piece. Sitting down and talking through someone's report with them is a great way to build that trust and build that relationship, as well as point out areas where they're naturally going to be successful and some areas that might be a challenge for them that the manager can then help them through.
I love it, especially, where we are at TTI. I love hearing that you actually have the assessment in there from before day one even, and then have coached that manager to build on that. So I'm sure you go over the values of the organization and the do's and don'ts of communication. It's really, like you said, it kicks it off and it builds trust very early on in the relationship.
Yeah, I think it's really important for managers to show that they care about how their employees receive information. So by having in one of those initial onboarding meetings, having your assessment there and comparing the two and saying, oh, I like to communicate this way, but you like to communicate that way. How can we meet in the middle? That's really showing the employee that you're invested in them and you really care that they're actually going to be enjoying what they're doing.
No, Clay, I love it. I love hearing
Preaching to the choir, right?
Yes, you're preaching to the choir. I love it. So, things happen in life, Clay. So despite all of everybody's best efforts, you have them set up for success. You do your 30, 60, 90s. When surprise do happen, how should managers respond?
So you're right. Things happen. And I always say that I have a job because people are weird. You think you're going along at a great pace and then something happens and seems out of the blue. People never quite respond exactly the way you think they will, or again, something just kind of a speed bump that they're bumping through. But the best way to get through it is a conversation.
Okay.
I like to talk with a lot of my coaching clients about intent versus impact.
Okay.
So we don't want to make an assumption about the intention of that surprise. This person did that because they disrespect me, or this person did that because they're trying to bring the company down. We need to have a conversation about, hey, this happened. This is what I saw. This is the impact it had on me. Let's talk about it. What was really going on? What were you trying to accomplish? Clearly, we didn't reach that goal. So how can we help you more effectively get to what you want? And it comes back to that connect, communicate, and confront. If someone is not doing something not performing a behavior the way we need it to be performed, we need to have a conversation about it. And again, if you catch it when it's small and have that conversation about it, it doesn't become an argument or a dismissal.
I love that. Catch it when it's small, and then the intent versus the impact, because there can be a lot of misconceptions on the intent of why people do specific things. So to your point, catch it when it's small, have those little conversations. But Clay, what happens when the surprise comes all the way from the top? I mean, you have your C level. So how can managers help that when it comes from the top?
Yeah, that's a really difficult place for some managers sometimes when they're trying to be loyal to the company while also trying to be loyal to their team and protect their team. So it is a fine line there, trying to balance the two. I think it's a conversation, but it's also trying to understand the intent, asking the C-suite, what was the reasoning behind this change? I'd love to understand more so that I can better explain it to my team. Because change is one of the biggest areas of fear, I'll say, for employees, is that when there is change happening, it often sets off alarm bells. Whether it's a big change or a small change, but being able to explain the why behind it is really important. So I would advise any manager who is being handed down a decision that they think their team's not really going to be excited about, try to understand the why behind it, and then try to translate that into terms that your team will be able to connect with, and really balancing again, the loyalty there to the company, but also to protecting your team and making sure that they are able to get done the work they need to get done.
So it's that explaining why. So when we look at different cultures, especially in different companies, how would you what can an organization do to embed a culture of no surprise management across all levels? So you kind of discussed the why. Is that one of the biggest impacts that you have seen? Is I know that I always like to know why we're doing specific things, but sometimes as an employee, you kind of sit and go, well, if the top says it, then that just must be, and we just are going to run with it. So what kind of cultures do you see in this no surprise management?
So it really builds in a culture of accountability
Okay.
where every employee knows that if my manager talks to me about X, they're going to talk to me about it again next month. And I
Okay.
can either choose to improve it, change it in some way, in order to have that next conversation, or I can choose not to. Sometimes it takes people a couple months to understand that the manager is going to be checking back in on it. We advise our managers to take good notes so that know what to check back in on. But it really, I guess the biggest way that a company can start to embed it is through one-on-ones. If you
Okay.
have those consistent manager-employee one-on-ones, then this connect, communicate, confront can happen on a regular basis. And again, we're catching it when it's small. We can have a little conversation about it now. And I'll check back in next month and say, hey, you did a great job coming to work on time. That's the one I always use because it's easiest and not the I guess biggest elephant in the room.
Yes,
Um,
definitely.
but it's that conversation again. And when we have managers, when we give managers the tools to have those consistent conversations, then everyone at the company starts to understand, okay, it is important that I meet X, Y, and Z. Or it is important that when I have a conversation with my manager, I really listen and try to understand what they're trying to get me to change or improve
So it's that listening versus hearing
in.
debate that we come up
Good
with.
one. Yeah. It's very important to make sure you have been heard before you leave the meeting, especially if you're talking to a high I like myself. You
Well,
got to recap.
Clay, I'm there. I'm 100 with you. So I completely understand that. Recap. So what are some of the long-term benefits that you have seen when leaders do consistently practice this approach with the connect, communicate, and then confront? What are some of the biggest benefits?
So that overall culture of accountability at the company is one of the biggest ones. We really start seeing people opt out if they don't want to be held accountable, or maybe they're not enjoying that role as much.
Yeah.
They self-select and move on to something else. But it also really creates a high-performing organization where everyone is doing their part. Everybody wants to work for a company that cares about them. And by having those consistent conversations, you're showing that you care about the employees. So you get much higher employee engagement. People stay longer. People are more loyal. They're more willing to go that extra effort, give that discretionary effort, and really get the company across the finish line.
Beautiful. Well, what's the biggest mindset shift that leaders need to embrace when it comes to the no surprise management to really work, to be effective?
I think the biggest thing, and actually this is a local HR person here in Charlottesville. Her name is Kelly Palmer.
Mhm.
She always says feedback is love. And I
Oh,
think that is the biggest mindset shift that managers need to make is that it is not mean. It is not rude. It is not whatever adjective you want to insert. Feedback is love. It's helping that person grow. It's investing your time in them and making sure that they know that you care. So as long as you deliver it in a caring way, in a kind way, then it really is meant to benefit them. And it might be a little uncomfortable in the moment, but in the long run, you're trying to help that person improve, whether they stay with your company forever or whether they are using you as a stepping stone onto whatever their next goal is. You can work together and be a really great team while they're here, but that requires you to give them the honest, clear, and kind feedback that they need to grow.
I love that. I might steal that. Feedback is love because that word feedback typically has a negative connotation. We don't,
Yeah.
when you sit down and you say, I have some feedback for you, people tend to really tense up and it's not a great experience. But when you say it, feedback is love, it kind of softens all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, last question, Clay. If managers could take one simple step, whether it's today or tomorrow, to reduce surprises, what would it be?
One-on-ones.
One
I'm
on
gonna
one.
keep coming back to that. It's the conversations. If you are checking in with your employees on a regular basis in a structured way,
Okay.
we get a lot of pushback from managers of, oh, I talk to my employees all the time. I talk to them every hour, it seems, because they come into my office and ask me a question. That is not the same. That is not accomplishing the same objectives. Those one-on-ones need to be dedicated time for you and the employee to really connect. And we actually suggest that it starts with the employee's time. So an easy way to break up a one-on-one is do a third of the time for them. They get to come and share and ask questions and ask for feedback. A third of the time for you. You get to give feedback, follow up on things, check in on projects. And then a third of the time for the future and or growth. So maybe it's setting priorities for the next week, or it's talking about a project that might be stuck, or it's talking about their continuing education of, like, we've got this conference coming up. Would you like to attend? That kind of thing. But it's giving that structured time that is really dedicated just to them, not 5 minutes in a drive-by hallway conversation. And that really, again, is showing that you care and are willing to connect, communicate, and confront.
Well, I love that. It's a third for you, a third for me, and then a third for the future. And again, it's that connect, communicate, and confront. So I I love all of these ideas, Clay. Is there anything else that you would like to share on no surprise management?
I don't think so. I think people really get it when they hear it. They're like, oh, yeah, we don't like surprises. So why would we surprise our employees? So it's a simple framework, just takes a little bit of discipline to actually stick to it.
Well, thank you. That actually wraps up today's episode of Working Progress. A big thank you to you, Clay, for sharing your wisdom and your expertise and your experiences on the importance of no surprise management. If you found today's conversation valuable, we would love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with a colleague or fellow leader. Your support helps us continue bringing these powerful conversations to life. And remember, surprises in the workplace aren't unavoidable, but with clear communication, trust, and proactive leadership, managers can create teams that stay aligned, resilient, and ready for success. As always, thank you for listening. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making progress. Take care, everyone.